Alright guys, so lately I've been browsing the tech subreddits and the technology board on 4chan, and I've been seeing more and more statements on bloated systems and software. This in itself is nothing really new, but what has changed is the criteria of what people consider to be bloat. Full disclaimer, I really suggest watching this video to the end because in the beginning, it might sound like I'm gatekeeping for a couple of moments, but at the end I drive home some points that show that bloat can be subjective in some cases, and as you just choose your software based on your needs, not what some neckbeard on the internet tells you to use. The threads that I see talking about bloat oftentimes are looking at their package count or the amount of dependencies a package has to determine what bloat is. This is not what bloat is. Just because a program requires you to install libraries to use it does not make it a bloated program. And if you really want to go there, then by this logic, DWM would be a bloated tiling window manager as it relies on X11, which requires about 46 packages to have the basic features, not including the extra dependencies required by your video drivers. Now don't get me wrong, X11 does have a very large codebase and compared to Wayland is bloated, but X11 as of this video still provides a better experience on Linux compared to Wayland, and it's just a sacrifice we just make. Now with that out the way, let's talk about what bloat actually is. By definition in relation to software, bloat is when you have unnecessary code lying around to perform a function that could otherwise be performed in simpler, more elegant solution. This can be twisted to really mean anything, but at the end of the day, the true intention of this statement is not in relation to how much software you have on your system, but rather the actual code base of the software itself. Let's put this at the simplest level that we often see this used, which is the desktop environment. Let's use KDE as an example. KDE in relation to a bare bones window manager such as DWM has a much larger code base. It uses more lines of code to achieve essentially the same function. It uses more system resources than DWM, and it does all this in the name of essentially more eye candy. DWM has less than 2,000 lines of code, while KDE, as of the making of this video, has exactly 23,268,652 lines of code if OpenHub is to be believed. However, there's a statement that needs to be made, which is that bloat, even at the base level, is subjective. To me, KDE is a bloated desktop environment because it has far more features than I could ever hope to use. I don't mind hacking and compiling a tiling window manager because it achieves all of the features I need, which is basically just to display my windows. Sure, I add more software on that stack such as a compositor and several quality of life programs such as a power manager, a networking applet, Bluetooth applet, SL status, a notification daemon. I even run Fey in the background to display my wallpaper, but that's pretty much it. That software stack achieves my exact needs, which is to have as minimal of an environment as I need without compromising my quality of experience on my operating system. It's a comfy setup, and to some, my setup would still be bloated, but to me, it is perfect. My RAM usage may seem high because I use ZRAM, but without ZRAM, I get about 100 megabytes in a base environment. The point I'm trying to make is that bloat is subjective at best. If you are someone who needs all the features of a fully fledged desktop environment, then that software is not bloated. Although from a programming point of view, there can be ways for the codebase to be cut down which would allow for both better performance and security. This often comes down to the micro digits and percentages, and as an end user will likely not apply to you. After all, we aren't working on servers with very limited resources and power budgets, we are on Linux desktops after all. To understand why bloat is considered a bad thing, we should talk about the Suckless Philosophy. The Suckless Philosophy is a concept that dictates that it is best to write software in a way that uses as small of a code base as possible to achieve a goal. This is by extension of the Unix philosophy, which states that when you write a tool, you write that tool to do one thing and do it well. The reasoning behind this is that back in the day before X11 or any display server was ever conceived, you had a few constraints to go by. The first constraint is system resources. The phone that you have in your pocket is likely more powerful than any computer that existed on the planet in 1969. The second constraint builds off the display server point I just mentioned. You didn't have a visual interface to interact with the computer. At best you had end curses, which at the time was not feasible due to the first constraint, and was really meant for people who were unfamiliar with the command line to perform basic tasks similarly to the graphical environments of today. Because of this, most users would be using a Getty, which if you don't know what that is, Press Ctrl Alt F2 to switch to Getty 2, and then do the same thing with F1 or F7 to get back when you're finished staring at that black screen. Getting back to the topic on tools, what the Unix philosophy means by do one thing and do it well means that you have a tool that fulfills one purpose, but works fast and can be used in multiple ways. Take ls for example. By itself, using ls will show all the files and folders in a directory, but if you add the -a argument, you'll see all the files in the directory, including hidden files or dot files, if you will. Add in the -l argument and you will see the permissions used for all files and folders in a directory. Add in the -d argument and you'll see only the directories in a given directory. The reasoning behind this is rather than have a single program that can achieve multiple different tasks, you can pick and choose the programs that you have on your system in an effort to save disk space and system resources. But the biggest reason behind this is because you can chain these given programs together to make a script, which functions as a tool made of tools to achieve a complex task in order to save the greatest resource of all, your time. Time is arguably the most important aspect in life, whether it be your personal life, work, or a given project, and that allows me to touch back on my point earlier and really bring into fruition, which is that if you really need those features that a fully fledged desktop environment has, then is it really bloat? Like I said, I personally don't mind hacking together my own various configs to set my environment how I like it, but if that is something that you either do not care to do, don't know how to do, or if such a minimal environment doesn't provide all the features you don't need, then that doesn't mean your desktop environment is bloated. That means my window manager's environment is not feature complete. Remember that we don't live in 1970 anymore, and while we should strive to do our best to abide by the Unix philosophy, remember that in some cases it's not even possible anymore. After all, you're watching this video on a web browser, which can do far more than just browse HTML documents, aka web pages. You can also watch videos, browse your files, read PDF documents. A browser can do way more than one thing, and yet it is a vital part of almost everyone's life in this day and age. Don't be influenced by anyone else on what software you choose to use, as long as it respects your freedom. After all, that is the entire point of free software. As a community, we should leave the gatekeeping at the door. Not everyone has the need nor the desire to be suckless, and that is absolutely fine. You need to pick and choose your battles. I have no problem navigating files in the terminal, and I often do, especially for maintenance work on most systems, but I also have PC Man FM installed because it's a small simple file manager that looks good and does what I need for my personal use, because we live in 2023. It still performs the exact same commands that you would do in the terminal. It's simply just a front end, and in the end it is a tool that makes my life easier. Thanks for listening to yet another one of my video essays. Leave a like if you liked what you heard, subscribe if you want more content like this, share if you have friends who are looking to make the switch to Linux, and as always, have an awesome and wonderful rest of your day.